Start. Okay. Welcome, everybody. My name is Haresh. Most of you know me or seen my name on screen somewhere. I'm with High Tech Advisors. We're a services firm based in Seattle area and Kirkland. We do engineering work, talent work, and IT and operations. Work with some of the big logos in Seattle, including Costco, Microsoft, Gates Foundation, startups, some mid-sized companies. So hopefully we'll get a chance to work with the ones that we haven't yet worked with so far. Some of you we're already working with. So, but I'm glad everybody could make it to this event. This is Communications 2030. If you're on the wrong flight, feel free to change. So we've been doing these events for post-pandemic, I think about 5 of these. And we've got a staunch partner in JP Morgan Chase. So David is one of the 3 brave front seaters. So we in the last 5 events, we've been looking at different domains and the impacts of AI on different domains. I think the first one was general, but then we looked at real estate. We looked at healthcare, gaming, and this time communications. So we're going to jump in pretty quickly. But before that, David, would you like to share a little bit about the bank and wealth management and other good things? Hello, hi.
Yes, David Kerban. I work at the private bank here in Seattle. We have one private bank that services the Pacific Northwest, but it's all part of the JP Morgan Chase family. So from the retail branches you see around, from the business bankers, the commercial bankers to the investment bank, we're all kind of one family. We've made a huge effort trying to get into the innovation economy. Obviously, with the collapse of SVB and we bought First Republic Bank, we really want to be part of the venture capital space, private equity space, anywhere from pre-seed all the way to IPO. So, we really want to be a part of that community. And every time we do these events, everyone is just like having a great time, and it's really good content. And what we do at the private bank, we work with the personal. So, we work with pre-transaction planning. We manage assets. We do lending. We do banking. We really kind of pride ourselves on the white glove service. So it's just part of this great JP Morgan family, and Haresh has been a wonderful partner. I am like super stretched, and I have my daughter waiting outside for me, so I can't stay the whole time. I really apologize, but we'll have to do another one again. To drive her to track practice. She's an amazing athlete. So I just thank you, Haresh, for putting this together. It's amazing.
Yeah, thank you, David. And do as you need to. But we'll follow up separately with David in future events or otherwise. But thanks, David. And so jumping into the panel, we have a great set of panelists. I think most of you have seen the names of the profiles. But I'm going to, rather than introducing each one individually, I'm going to hand it off to Elizabeth, who is doing several things. I think she's a lecturer or a professor in entrepreneurship. Is that right?
Yeah, over at the UW. So
at the UW.
Yeah, I teach at night, and then my day job is helping HP think of new businesses and get them out into the world.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining the panel. And Elizabeth is our moderator. So for those of you who've seen me moderate in the past, she doesn't have that much bar to meet or exceed. Thank you, Elizabeth. And I also get a break, so now I can eat and drink. So thank you so much. But I'll let you take it away. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me here. I have my notes on my phone, so I'm not just trying to scroll X while I'm here. I'm actually, there's a purpose for that. So actually, I want to go down and just like one sentence intro each of you. So have you maybe how do you start, and then we'll just go down. So one sentence intro to give the context of what your perspective is for the audience.
Sure. Is this working?
Yes.
Right. I'm Javier Guraski. I'm a startup founder. Elizabeth makes it sound very easy. I don't know how you do it. I've been hitting my head against the wall for 3 years trying to make AI happen and still trying to figure it out. Previously, I worked at Microsoft and Microsoft Research, and then I helped start a company called Our Studio. Our current company is called HAL9. Thanks.
Hold on, what does your company do? What's the purpose of it?
Yeah, so we help enterprises bring ChatGPT. That's the easy explanation. The more convoluted explanation, we actually glue everything together. So we don't provide an LLM, but we help you connect to the LLM, like the chat interface, the vector DB, and put it all together. Yeah.
So helpful. That's awesome.
I'm Ishan Nand, VP of Product at Edgio. There we go. Thank you. I joined Edgio via the acquisition of Layer Zero, or CTO. Edgio is an edge and CDN platform that powers about 4% of the internet. So you've probably used an Edgio-powered experience and didn't realize it. The applications product that I manage combines serverless, edge computing, and AI together to enable our enterprise clients to secure, accelerate, and host their public-facing web applications. And outside of work, I'm really passionate about AI education. And I have a side project called Spreadsheets Are All You Need that teaches how a large language model works through spreadsheets. There's an Excel spreadsheet you can download, implements all of GPT-2, an early precursor of ChatGPT, inside a spreadsheet. So you type in the left side of the spreadsheet, and you can follow the entire path of the spreadsheet out to getting that text on the other side. And you can Google for Spreadsheets Are All You Need and see that online.
And Haresh, you're going to send out all these links, right? So that everyone can follow along and have our own spreadsheet of AI? Yes. Yes. Question?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Sachin. I've been in Seattle area for the last 11 years. I currently, in my role, work for a company which basically is changing the norm in terms of customer experience and IT asset management. It's Freshworks. Prior to that, I spent 10 years with Amazon, and before that, 10 years with enterprise softwares across the world. But for last 8 to 10 years, I think my focus has been decision science, which is practical application of all the cutting edge capabilities that we have. So I'm on the other side of the spectrum where I love to use these technologies or inventions and try to apply in real business domain for immediate impact to the business. I did it for AWS while they were in few billion, till they reached to 80 to 90 billion dollars, and then I think I'm extending the same with the current. That's all, maybe. And I have UW connection to follow.
I have my own. Hi, Ohad. I'm a VP of applications in Demandbase. And we help companies get better marketing and sales alignment, technically increase the sales efficiency. There is a lot of classic AI behind the scenes, a lot of Gen AI now on the front line with salespeople. But I don't think myself as necessarily an AI expert. I do think myself as a thinker. So I have opinions, might be right, might be wrong. We had a nice pre-arguments, but good ones, on the Zoom call before. Besides that, I'm a father of 4, and that's why I was late today. Or not late, on time, but not enough time to mingle. And I love dancing, which is surprising for people, but I think that's the other side that keeps the creativity alive.
I love that. Do you want to do a little dance move for us
At the end,
again?
yeah, we'll finish and we'll do
good.
something.
Okay, good. Okay, awesome. Well, let's start by defining our terms. What is AI? I mean, is it a tool? Is it a digital person? Is it something that we don't even know yet that's controlling everything? Like, what is it? And so, yeah, so what is the definition that you like to think of? And what usefulness do you see it? Do you see it as a tool, just some code, or an actual digital person? We'll just popcorn out all these questions. So if you feel like you have an answer, just go ahead and say something.
That's where we stop the online discussion, I think.
So, the technical term is a system that emulates some form of human intelligence. What's really popular right now is a subfield of that, machine learning. So systems that can actually learn, don't have to be programmed. But even more recently, what we've seen is, the the thawing of the AI winter with ChatGPT and generative AI, and that's AI that can actually generate things instead of just analyzing. And the way I think that's really helpful to think about this is we actually had, AI systems every decade, every, summer then winter of AI. Things like, the in your social media feed, there'd be AI algorithms on that, or AI algorithms trying to figure out the best way to sell you stuff online. And all those are statistical models. And what we've finally figured out how to do in really like the last couple of years that we saw the fruition of it was how to apply statistical methods to actually just writing text that sounds like a human. But it's still just another statistical model, another case where we've finally been able to apply data and compute with enough intensity to apply those same techniques to this new format, just like we were able to do it with images a decade ago, and it could recognize where a person's face is that you see in your camera. And so when you hear somebody talk about AI, usually right now they're talking about like ChatGPT and all the generative AI. But it's been going on, and it's much broader than that for the last couple decades.
I think I define it as a transformative or a discipline which is opening up the possibilities and creating this optimism towards the next wave of, I think, our planet or humankind. So I think I like the aspect, the amount of possibilities or doors or optimism it is bringing with all the attention. Obviously, I think there are other things also coming along. However, if you see around us, I think the amount of euphoria or optimism about solving previously unsolvable problems have garnered an amount of effort and the traction years.
Yeah, I think person or a tool, it's not a person yet. I don't know if it will get to a person. We talked about maybe with not enough energy in the world to feed enough power to emulate that yet. I think at this point, I still look at it as a set of tools. Yes, it passes the Turing test in some, so one can argue it has intelligence, but it's not. And when I look at the most useful usages as a development org today, and I know it's not communication, you have Copilot and the like that gives you the experience of maybe a college hire pair programming with you when you build stuff. So as we progress, I'm guessing it will go more and more from the tool to help you build stuff to be the main interface to start building stuff. And at that point, the differentiation between using that tool in a very, very deep way or allowing that tool to build stuff for you and fine-tuning it, maybe you can treat it as a person and not as a tool. But at this point, I still think a tool.
Yeah, I can add my 3 cents, but obviously I agree with the panelists, right? At the end of the day, AI is statistics. It's just predicting the next token, and that's kind of like the boring definition of like, like it's predicting the next token, and it's statistics. But I think more interestingly, and just to be controversial, one of the properties that researchers found was that there's some level of emergent behavior, right, that we didn't program on AI. So, like when we started figuring out prompting, right, for those of you that are using ChatGPT, it's like, well, the models were not supposed to do that. No one coded to potentially translate and at the same time complete text and all these other things. So there's some level of emergent behavior that we're exploring. And obviously, I don't believe that they're full persons, but for the context of this discussion, like I do want to propose that we think of them as persons, not to say that, I'm advocating for AI rights or anything like that, or consciousness, but just like the framework, I think, serves better if we think of, I'm interacting with a person, I'm not interacting with a tool. But we can get into that. It's just mostly like my mental model. Yeah.
I'll add to that. So I describe it as a simulation of a person. And at a certain point in the distant future, maybe that simulation gets so good, you can't tell the difference. The other, I think, more, near-term profound part about this is the other thing you mentioned. We didn't program a lot of these behaviors in, right? And we didn't tell it what the parts of speech were. It just figured that out through the statistics. And so the real transformative thing in the near term is how many other problems can we apply that to, like protein folding, where we don't have to really know what the physics are or maybe some sense of it, but we don't need to program every single piece of it. And how many more problems can we just throw compute and data at and solve problems we didn't think were solvable? That's what's really exciting to me.
Yeah, no, I mean, 100%. And, just to be more perhaps detailed on that emergent property, because I think we've always had emergence of intelligence, right? From statistics, right? When you see like a linear regression, is like, well, you only have the linear regression for the first 10 values, and the next 5 values are in some ways emergent. But I think, I think when you look at especially tools like generative AI and ChatGPT, I think they keep amazing us on what is the level of emergence, right? Like, hey, could you help me, create poetry in this style, right? Or the like. And they started to become to feel more human-like, even though, definitely far away from being a human. But I think that's remarkable. And yeah, again, the framework that I would use is more of a person, but I like your description of being a digital person, right? Or a digital representation of a person. Yeah.
I like that. Okay, so does everyone understand, right, what AI is and what it isn't? So it's kind of a statistical probability of what's to come, and so that the computer can just predict and really good. Human beings maybe are not that unique as we think, and so therefore maybe we are a whole bunch of patterns. And so predicting what we would say next is not uncommon or unique, right? And so therefore, maybe it is a digital person, a hologram, existing. So, cool. Well, we'll sort of let that sort of simmer at the beginning of kind of okay, exactly kind of what it is, what its limits, can it think for itself in some ways, right? And create things that we weren't imagining. That's kind of cool. But in, sort of bringing it back to communications, AI has had a huge impact on energy, data, and data centers and the way that we communicate, infrastructure, all of these things. So what do you see as the impact of AI on communication infrastructure and user experience?
I can start just to, chain it with the previous thought. So this is to me why it's interesting to look at it as a person. Again, not saying that it's conscious, person that deserves human rights or whatever. But I think if we think about AI as a person, then, I think we can expect it to adapt to our best communication channels, right? And, I think in some ways I would argue that we don't need to change the way that we communicate to accommodate AI. So that's, perhaps the panelists, have a different point of view. But the idea would be, well, if we like in our company to use email, maybe the AI should be replying through email and not through ChatGPT, right? Or if we do Zoom meetings, maybe the AI should be on Zoom. That's not possible today, but maybe in the future there's some level of. So I would argue that maybe communications should evolve more towards makes us more productive as humans and less about what is convenient for the AI. But that would be just one point of view.
I agree that definitely if you think a few years ahead and not that far, we'll get to a point where we have a personalized AI that helps us do our day-to-day jobs. And whether that email communication, Zoom avatars, even today when you go on a Zoom chat, they have some of the peripheral AI functionality, like summary and transcripts and all of that things. And you start seeing some AI functionality on avatars of people who don't want to open the camera. This is also AI, and it does make conversations easier. I prefer to see an avatar than seeing nothing, which happens a lot. And I'm guessing in the not so far future, you can already today create real images of yourself or a 3D scan or whatever generation. And you can just not shave ever and still on Zoom look whatever you want to look like. And I think that's where your personalized AI will meet you where you want, how you do your day-to-day job. I think the next phase will be AI talking to AI, and then where do we fit in? But we'll maybe talk about that later.
One of the things Sam Altman has said is he thinks the winning model over the long term will be the one that's the most personal to you. To kind of follow up what you said, the thing that I wrestle with is it going to be the next browser? It's the mediator between all your interactions online. Or will it be more like electricity, right? You got electricity in the home, and then look at your kitchen countertop. There's all these different appliances powered by electricity. Now we've got electricity. You can have a motor that can be a blender. We can have, a toaster with a heating element. Is it going to be just sprinkled throughout everything? So an example of that latter one is if you go to LinkedIn. I don't know how many people turn on LinkedIn Premium. Those sparkles are everywhere, right? I think it was I might be misremembering, but Moderna CEO, when he signed that deal, he's like, I expect my employees to be using AI 20 times a day at least, right? And part of the benefit of having built into all your workflows, sprinkled all over that, is it reminds you where you should be using it. Or is the right model the ChatGPT model, where most of your day you're just talking to it, like an assistant? And that's the part that I'm still not sure about. But I think that's it's clearly going to be a key part of how we interact.
The way I see it, I think in the last couple of years, there were attempts, right, from Internet of Things events where you can have pocket devices, other glasses, and other glasses and other things that came up could not reach to that level of potential in terms of adoption or usability. So I see it, I think, all those things really coming together, Ishan, as you were referring to. And I think they reach to that level of productivity, usefulness, as well as adoption in day-to-day settings. For whether, as you were talking about, I may be, or I will be having an ability to pull a person from a virtual Zoom meeting and simulate for a more personalized one-on-one conversation, which I may not be getting as an individual. I'll have a choice if I prefer more in-person meetings, maybe just pulling them out of whatever thin air and making them appear they are sitting in front of. So all those things which were, you can say, vicious, will be reality, the way I see it.
I think to double down on what Imran said, I think if you're not using AI today, you will be not relevant in any industry in the next 5 years, probably. And I can tell you that I expect every single of my team to use AI to make their day-to-day more efficient today. I'm sure a year from now, it will be more mind-blowing, and we had just a GPT 4.0 announced 2 days ago, and then Google announced the same thing-ish. It already is mind-blowing. I showed it to my parents, and my mom said, wow, this is cool. I didn't know that machines can do that today. And if my mom, who is like 71 now, can understand that this is big, I would say that if you're not using it, even today, definitely in the future, but
at the user experience level, though, I think we're all talking about the positivity. Like, there needs to be some set of antibodies around, the misuse of it, whether it's deep fakes or just knowing that sometimes it'll, right now, still hallucinate and give you stuff that's inaccurate. And knowing how to do that is really important for the user experience. And like, good example actually is, Copilot, right? How they work that into the user experience the right way, it takes a lot of thought. When you see it, it's obvious, but I think there's a lot of ways where you need to think about the fidelity and the whole workflow that somebody's dealing with that has to be done carefully. The other thing you asked about, though, was infrastructure. And I think what we're going to see is the whole infrastructure is going to get smarter as well. Already, like, we use AI to route around anomalies in the network and things like that, as well as to protect, websites from attackers. And we can do it closer to the attacker so that the rest of the infrastructure doesn't have to bear the brunt of that attack. So I think we're going to see, smarter infrastructure, smarter devices. You referenced the Meta glasses. Xerox PARC had this idea, ubiquitous computing. Like, imagine your light switch had an IP address. This was in the 90s. People were like, you're crazy. Well, now imagine your light switch is running an LLM, right? So that's the type of interesting future we might have to start thinking about.
Well, and I love that you brought that up just because, again, with responsibility AI, right? So like, okay, yeah, AI is ubiquitous everywhere, or could be, or will be. Maybe, it's a really smart robot today. Maybe one day it might be a really smart human. And so we have to think about responsibility. And so what do you guys think about with respect to security, privacy, and hyper-personalization versus privacy as well? So when you're thinking about responsible AI, what do you think about it? And then what are you doing about it as well?
I can comment a little bit, but follow up from the previous one. I think one of the things that is interesting is also thinking how communication is going to change on us, because now we have this tool, right? So it's like, if the AI is getting better and smarter, are we getting dumber? Because, we can write like a cover letter very easily, right? But that means that, we need to put less effort into communication, right? To some degree. And yeah, in terms of security, my personal point of view, it's, again, I guess I'll reference a lot this analogy of thinking it as a person, but I think it's important to, when you hire someone, right, and he's out of college, you don't let them, you don't give them access to the bank account of the company, right? It's like, hey, just buy whatever, right? Like whatever you feel like, go for it. Like they have very particular set of restrictions. Like, well, maybe you can use your email account and you can email this many people. Like you cannot email everyone on the company, and like if you need to submit expenses. So like I think we have already a lot in companies. We have a lot in place, kind of like these security guardrails to not do very, very bad things. So I think those should apply to AI. And again, I like the reference of thinking of them as a person. Is like, like we'll trust, because right now like AI is pretty dumb, in many ways. So like, don't want to give them access to everything, but you can, it's also getting smarter really fast, right? So like it kind of like needs to earn its trust on the company little by little. And that would be my philosophy. I don't know if there's other.
Well, I think the builders, as well as the users of AI tools, are going to have to learn how to build secure private applications the same way we had to do with the web. So a great example of this is there's a nonprofit called the OWASP organization. I don't know if any of you been through a security audit, right? And it has things like cross-site scripting that your development team needs to learn about, especially if you're going through like PCI compliance to, accept credit cards. Over the last 12, 18 months, they started a OWASP for LLMs, and it's the top 10 vulnerabilities. And I loved your, things that keeping it in a box and what it can do. That's one of their top 10 vulnerabilities. So they've got prompt injection as one of them. They've got another one that I really like, excessive agency. And the founder of the project is like, who in 2001, like who designed HAL 9000, decided to give it access to the life support systems? Like, why did you give it access to the off switch for the people? Maybe you should have rethought that. So I think we're just gonna have to learn like where the fault lines are as builders and also as users. And, it'll take some time, but we'll get there.
I think that quite legal challenges roughly 10 years back when some of these AI technologies of real-time inferences were not available. And I think based on some of those experiences of dealing with global regulatory compliance and other stuff, I think my take is, I think this security and privacy should be taken as if writing a constitution of a nation, and there should be proper resolution and systems in place, because this area is so subjective and there will be arguments and in favor, against it. I think something which I could consider as intrusion to my privacy may be acceptable to another user. So I think a more holistic approach, if we want to really expedite these things and setting these things, I think it shouldn't be left with some of the policy guidance like stuff which was GDPR and other stuff which became so controversial, as well as really did not reach to the level of comfort either for the, I think, organizations or some of the users, etc. So more holistic approach. And then I think proper bodies or governance structures about resolutions to reach to a meaningful conclusion without some of these things being dragged into our judiciary systems, and I think just convoluting the whole purpose.
I want to follow up on that, where you talked about how like the resolution isn't going to be the same for everyone. Jensen, the CEO of NVIDIA, talks frequently about this idea of a sovereign foundation model. Every company, it's more than just privacy, it's cultural decisions, or even just does the foundation model work well with your native tongue in that country? And so I think we could easily see those types of policies as well as linguistic differences captured differently in each country.
So keeping the data, because he also talks a lot about keeping data within the
Yes.
country. India is very, big also on creating policies and regulations for just where does data stay. And so, are you also seeing, the regulations about personhood as well within that? And yeah.
I think my opinion is soon we'll talk about colonization or spatial colonizations of data centers. And that's where I think some of these lines will get blurred. I think we are focused on getting human species on Mars. Soon, I think colonization, because of the space, other challenges, I think these lines of countries, nations, European data being in this country or that country, I think soon we'll realize that, hey, maybe this thing will become a more overarching without controls of certain regulatory bodies or countries. I think it needs to be a more unique or global stuff, and maybe interspatial colonizations of data centers will come.
I
I know you guys talked and so many thoughts. We'll start slowly. I think that I'm very concerned about privacy. I'm more concerned about the security and our ability to identify right from wrong. It's an arms race always with attackers and malicious actors. And now they have so many tools on their hands, and it's going to only get worse. So I think there is a lot of opportunity to build those defenses or layers to protect everyone. And I do think at the back of my mind, I'm less concerned about my own privacy just because I believe that there isn't a choice. Like most of the privacy we think we have today, maybe we have it. One of the pillars that I have under my control is the ads. It's a ad system for business to business, and there is so much that big players know about you today, even if you try to delete yourself from the internet. I don't think we'll get to a point where you can truly be an effective member of a community without some exposure to some AI model. And if you have some exposure, at some point you'll get a lot of exposure, maybe not your bank account, but definitely your preferences, your day-to-day. So I'm concerned about privacy, but I think privacy will be solvable. I'm more concerned about malicious actors and what will they do with those tools in their hands, or doing already.
Yeah, we do a lot of, protecting websites from attackers. And we're preparing for a world where all the malicious actors are using what we're calling AI supercharged attacks, right? Certain types of attacks that required a human or couldn't have been done on scale, they're now going to be able to do. They're going to set a bunch of, malicious agents at your website. And so to fight fire with fire, we're going to need the same type of equivalent side on the defense. And that's part of how your infrastructure is going to get smarter as it's trying to figure out, who are the legitimate agents from the attacking agents.
But I think on the personal communication, like even social engineering, I saw on Instagram ads that I know are fake. I know that they are generated by an AI who generates video because Mr. Beast, who my daughters follow, does not, you see the lips not moving with the audio. But I know that a year from now, I won't be able to tell that. And then our level of scrutiny and realistically, it won't be enough. I can't protect my kids from not clicking on that ad that they truly believe is real. So I'll have to have mechanisms and systems to protect, again, the less educated yet people. And I'm thinking about my 10-year-old, not necessarily people. People maybe understand it.
I mean, the really famous example is, I can't remember where it was, somewhere in Asia, where, somebody pretended to be the CFO on a Zoom call, and they made off with maybe, I think it was a couple $1 million. And they deep faked that. Or the classic one where they call up, a grandparent who may not be as aware of these types of things and pretends to be somebody based off of like YouTube they found of them on video. That's like the really scary social engineering. And then you take those types of scenarios as spear phishing, basically, that could have been done at scale. And then, somebody can generate 1,000 of those at every employee at your organization in order to get access. I definitely agree. It'll be something we're gonna have to deal with.
So with deep fakes and everything else, I mean, how are you seeing then the communication channels changing over time? You're saying that you're going to have these, good actors going against, bad agents, right? So good agents against bad agents. But how does that change communication over time with AI? Do you see any changes to those channels? What do you see that future kind of looking like short-term, long-term?
I mean, over the long term, it's kind of hard to predict. Over the short term, what we can do is use the knowledge from the good actors in the community about, vulnerabilities and other things like that, and start actually applying, virtual patches to various systems to keep them secure, where an attacker could go and just scan your entire website for all its possible vulnerabilities. We can also still patch them at the same time. So that's an example of using automation to fight automation. But for these deep fakes and these other ones, those are social engineering attacks. They'll have to be like at every layer of the infrastructure stack, from the network where we typically play all the way up to your email client or your browser. There's going to be different layers of protections and security to prevent users from, possible things. And again, AI might help because it notices an anomaly, like a big transaction going out that from an employee that probably shouldn't have been authorized for it might be a sign that there's an issue.
Yeah, I would just add that, again, I'll come back to this analogy all over and over until you guys are sick of it. But, I think a lot of these problems already exist today, right? Like when I go to YouTube, right? Like I follow a couple YouTubers, and once in a while I get a new video and I'm like, oh, cool, I didn't know that happened. And then I realized, like, wait a moment, that's not the YouTuber that I'm following, right? That's someone random that is stealing content and they're not even using deepfakes, right? So I do think that obviously AI make things worse in some ways. I also want to point out that it has the potential of making things much better, right? Like with any technology out there, you can look at nuclear fission, right? And, create nuclear plants or, create things that are not that great. And I think it's just kind of like making things, move faster, which again makes our heads spin. But a lot of these problems, I think we already have them today, right? Like robocallers that, like tell you like, hey, like you owe me money, like you need to give me my credit card and deposit it. Like we have a lot of those. And, I don't know if you have a different point of view, but like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of analogies.
So I agree. Theoretically, they're all things we could have done. The difference is the scale. And, quantity can be a quality all its own.
Styling, right?
Yeah. And there's a really good article from Benedict Evans, who's a well-known tech analyst, where he has a whole post about this. And he uses the example of like listening in on phone calls. Like that used to be a manual thing. How do we feel when it can happen automatically? Or how do you feel when it can happen automatically in the entire company? And your boss is looking at every, Teams or Slack message and like, okay, show me all the people who had negative sentiment about me in a chat. Like, people get a little uneasy, and we have to search through what we think is that's a societal decision. I don't know.
Yeah, and obviously I agree. I mean, I'm pro technology, and I'm an entrepreneur at AI company. But I also think that if you think it through the lens of, well, this is a problem that already exists. How can I solve it? Like, for instance, thinking about like spam, right? That I'm sure like we all get a ton of spam on email. Like one easier way is to say like, I'm only gonna filter people, from this list, right? And only the 10 people that message me, right? My manager, my colleagues, and that thing that go in a special folder. So like, I think we can also do a lot of things that are not super high tech to like try to address some of the problems.
I don't disagree. Don't get me wrong. I am more pro AI than AI skeptic. Like I do AI teaching in like my spare time. So like I agree, but I do think the scale can be a really scary factor for, even if you and I know that these things are possible, I feel like to the public, they may not have been aware of them, but now they're encountering them.
And then Sasha, I think you want to jump in here too.
Yeah, so I think there was a question. I think, thanks for that. I was going to evolution of modes of communications. I think I see it was already changing before the recent uptick in the AI adoption. I think we were moving from telephony to more chat-based, on the go, at my own convenience, especially in the areas of customer experience in retail and certain other industries. With the recent AI innovations, I think that uptick is continuing, and this, especially in customer experience now, I can reach out for a customer service request through any app or device I am using, and the expectations from users, and that's where I think most of the companies are putting in efforts, including ours, is how can I make it as seamless and contextually aware, so that as a user, I do not care whether I think I was chatting 10 minutes back to a human, and suddenly there is a seamless transition to an AI agent. And then I think it has gone back to somebody else, not only the context, as well as I think overall productivity from AI agents, customer service providers, as well as it's a great experience for users. So I feel like all these modes of communications will be blending in, and that's where the communication pieces or interactions will evolve with some of.
I agree, but as a user, at the end of the day, I don't want to deal not with your AI agent and not with a real agent. I want that problem solved, and that's where I think at some point I hope there'll be some helper that I can delegate this headache to, like changing your flight because something happened, and not
should-
worry about that.
You should check some of our products.
Well, when you're looking at AI and the, amount of spread ubiquitousness around, you start thinking about new business models, monetization, right? So lots of people are making a lot of money off of AI right now. And so would love to hear about what you guys see as the new revenue opportunities and business models enabled by AI. So AI monetization, real change, real hype.
I've been passionate or struggling with this. I think there has been a lot of activity in this space, and that's where I think the industry, are trying to decide the entire value chain, which is primarily if you are on the hardware side, NVIDIAs of the world or major cloud service providers. I think there is money to be made. If you are building applications for real world usage, or in between, let's say you are building foundational models, OpenAI, etc., monetization is still there, question mark. I think users are still skeptical. I think the pricing strategies or monetization strategies of past need to change with this kind of transformative or evolve. Because as a user, I want to see the value of AI right away. I may not be ready to invest because of the whatever I think apprehensions I may have right away. And that's where some of the pricing and monetization models or notions of the our current world, you'll see them evolving and challenging. So I think monetization or other aspects depends where you are in the AI value chain. If you are one of the hardware or chips providers, there is money to be made, or you are better placed. The more you are going towards real world applications, that's where I think convincing your users to buy. You don't have historical purchase behaviors for these kind of product categories. So I think taking your product to market and having an user to buy or pay for it, I think will be challenging for some time. The way I see.
I think yes, and at the end of the day, you need energy. You need compute to run that, and someone needs to pay for that, and it cannot be the cloud providers. They need to sell that somehow. So I do imagine a world where will be some tokenization of usage. There already is, like if you go OpenAI or others, you practically pay for tokens to run prompts. And we'll probably keep seeing that. So maybe the adoption will be with micro introducing those behaviors to different parts of the economy. And if we're looking enterprises, yes, it will be harder, but you'll still be able to do that. So I think there is an opportunity there. I think if we talked about communication and AI models, there will be an opportunity on that network of AIs, or AI platform. They need to communicate to each other. They will need to pay somehow to each other. And whoever build that hosts or the network that everything runs on top and be able to build the adoption. And I know OpenAI are trying to do that. There are other players as well. Will definitely be a big player there. And I think another opportunity is we talked about the fraud detection and the protection of consumers or businesses. There will be a lot of opportunity. This is an arms race. It's never going to end realistically. So that's probably an area that if we invest in, you can keep going forever, fighting competition and getting paid for that.
The pragmatic general guideline is, maybe don't focus on monetization in most companies. Focus first on how you can use it to improve your existing workflows and your existing processes, especially within your company. So if you look at McKinsey did an analysis and they outlined the 4 areas of the organization where 75% of the value is going to be in generative AI. Only one of those was customer facing. That's chatbots. The rest were like internal product management, internal marketing of generating and stuff. And, at the Gartner Summit this year, their guideline in talk after talk after talk was, if you're experimenting with this, do a POC if you've never done it first, and make sure it's internal so when it messes up, you don't screw up in front of your customer. So I think that's actually the first place to look for. And there's a really good framework that I like from a Google product manager. I believe his name was James Smith. And it's actually pre-ChatGPT that works through, like, should you apply machine learning to this problem? And the first beginnings of that flowchart are the ones you'd expect. It's like, do you have the data, right? Could regular rules not apply? But the last two are the ones, like, few people think about. They're, do I need to explain the result? Right? So if I'm using it for loan applications, do I need to know if it's not biased against a protected class? And the other one is, how tolerant are we of errors? That's kind of why some of the, it seems like we've been in reverse in the generative AI boom, like it's images and stuff and not business tasks sometimes, because, if a pixel's off an image, there's a higher tolerance for those kinds of errors. So those are, like, I'd say 3 frameworks for thinking through, like, how to apply it right now. Over the longer term, who knows? Like I said, is it going to be the browser, the main mediation form? We're seeing a whole bunch of potentially creative destruction happening right now. Like Google just announced the search experience, and there's plenty of articles talking about how various bloggers are getting their articles are being summarized, they're losing clicks. The whole incentive structure of the internet could be completely rewritten in a few years. So there will be opportunities for that, but how we monetize that is anybody's guess right now.
Yeah, I mean, related to monetization, I think it's super hard. If someone found like a magic pot of free AI monetization, let me know. We could use like free revenue. It just doesn't happen that way, right? Like, I mean, you talk to customers and, like everyone is trying to find value, to your point, right? Like, so I do think that finding monetization on the short term is really hard. Value is definitely there. I mean, I think all of us have used ChatGPT, and my own estimate is that it helps me like 10 to 20% be more productive. So value is definitely there. But what we've seen in the enterprise is that you need to be very smart with the projects that you take, right? Because not every AI project is going to, or I should say, not every generative AI project is going to pay its value back in value. And, it's back to Gartner. They have like the Gartner hype cycle that I don't know if some of you have seen. But, like we keep doing this mistake over and over. Like whenever we see a new technology, it's like, oh my God, that's going to solve all our problems. We put all the money there and then we realize like, oh, it's not doing anything. And then it takes like another like 5-10 years, right, to realize the actual value. So to me, generative AI is going to bring like a ton of value long-term. Less clear how it monetizes. But right now I would say that monetization is more hype than anything, mostly because we're overly excited. I don't know if you agree with that, but yeah.
I just follow on that. One of the other things they said is they were telling all the CIOs and CTOs, to your point, like about that hype of expectations, pick 4 projects, 3 to 4, because you think AI is going to be useful for this, and if you bet it all on one project, you and AI are going to lose credibility within the organization. So prepare for like having 3 or 4 and know that only one of those may end up making it to production.
The way I see it, it will change the pricing strategies. I think instead of pay-per-use or subscription models, I think it will be more shared value driven. As a customer, as and when I realize value, I share the cost or profit, etc. So I think there will be some innovation the way I think the pricing models or strategies have worked. Otherwise, I think justifying real value, as we talked about, in some of these things which could be really transformative or more forward or future looking, will be tough. And I am seeing some of these trends because of the recent macroeconomic stuff as well. If some of these things were 2 years or 3 years back, where I think entire world was in euphoria mode, some of these things would have been easier. Next 2 or 3 years, I think it will be more shared value driven. I think especially down the food chain, if you are not producing those chips, hardware or networking event for end user applications, I think it will be more innovation that we'll see coming in pricing.
I think the scary part, or not scary, but for any startup out there or any application level, I agree that's the riskier spot to be, because I already know of some startups that with the recent announcement, they are not relevant anymore. And I'm sure that there are plenty more. So if you're in the roadmap of one of those big giants that are working a year down the line, stop what you're working on and start thinking 5 years down the line. Because that will be the next evolution of OpenAI, the next evolution of Google.
Yeah, I mean, part of what makes this hard to predict is like, we don't know what the capabilities are going to be. A great example was in the last 48 hours when we saw with the new GPT-4o, there's a great demo, if you haven't seen it, of this child and his father doing tutoring right with the model. It's showing him and it's having a great conversation. There's a new monetization possibility, AI tutoring. But maybe that's going to be swallowed up by the foundation model providers themselves. So the litmus test that I think Sam Altman gave was really interesting. He said, imagine the model is 10 to 100 times smarter than it is right now. Does that change your business model or not? And that's how you know whether you're in our path.
So before we open it up to our audience, I just have one last question for you. And so, we've talked a lot about today, the future, what's happening now. What is your advice for our audience regarding AI? What should they be thinking about? What do you want to have them left with? Do you want them to be optimistic, pessimistic? Do you want them to go look at some new frameworks, read some books? What should be top of mind for them?
I mean, I'm super positive here, and I definitely think that everyone should be finding ways to using AI on the enterprise, right? It could be as simple as, if you cannot use ChatGPT on the enterprise, right? It's like ask your manager, is like, why can't I? Because there are certain tasks that I can do faster, right? I don't know who maybe someone knows who has the code. I think it might have been Chamat from the Olin podcast, but was saying like, the people are not gonna be replaced by AI. People that are not using AI are going to get replaced by AI, right? And I think there were a lot of perspectives on this panel of, hey, it's not going to solve all your problems, but definitely like figure out where it works. Be smart with the budget, because it's so easy for a vendor like me tell you is like, yeah, give us $10 million, like it's going to work, right? So never believe that, like assume that is a good degree of skepticism, and but definitely give it a shot and find ways where it's super productive.
The cure for being a skeptic or an optimist is to just use it, right? That it's just training and awareness come from having a mental model that comes from interaction. I would just find a way to incorporate it. I mean, use that count that CEO said. I expect my employees to use it 20 times a day. I'm amazed. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I should have used, I'll be halfway through a project and I'll be like, oh, I could have done this in half the time. With ChatGPT, I'm like, why did I wait till I was halfway through? You forget. So it might be useful to keep a counter and then hold yourself to it. And then in your organizations, find the people who naturally lean in, harness that enthusiasm, but temper it with the other part of the more governance side of your organization to figure out the right way to roll it out, and go at whatever pace makes sense for your organization or your family.
I think I'll say use it to open the doors of possibilities, but don't let it overwhelm you. I think just like social media and other stuff, I think the amount of information or knowledge that we all can consume, which is coming out daily, is really overwhelming. So as long as you can control, I think, or balance that part, I think we all should be good.
I know, after all of the advices, there isn't much left. I am an optimist. I know I'm the gloom and doom guy here. Not necessarily, but I really am optimistic about that technology. And as I said before, if you're not using it, start using it. It doesn't matter what form, but I'm sure that there are many crossroads in your life that you can use it.
Awesome. So now let's open it up to questions.
Could we ask the audience a question? How many people are using it? Just a show of hands. I've used it a few times a week. Okay, so maybe we should challenge ourselves to give them advice for those who are already using it.
Well, hold on. Before we do that,
Okay,
I know that we love to talk, but I just want to make sure that we get our questions from our audience, because we do have just a couple more minutes here. So just want to make sure. But then, yes, we can go back and go, okay, now that we know these are experienced users, what more advice could we give? Yeah, talk to you afterwards, but go ahead.
The SEC is going to require companies to essentially put the energy usage and greenhouse gas emissions on everybody's balance sheets, even if you're using, let's say, Microsoft products. And in Europe, that's coming, I think, next year. Then we're going to probably see it then too. And how do you see that affecting? I agree. Yeah, you see that. Yeah. How do you see this affecting kind of participation behavior, where all of a sudden you have, say, let's call them Neanderthal companies that are boring businesses that don't really need AI. And by adding AI, they actually are adding the same vulnerabilities, because now their balance sheet includes all of the energy use and action.
What company doesn't need AI today? I don't think those companies exist or will survive the next decade. Even your plumber probably needs to use AI today, and it will need to use more in the future. So I don't think, I think that's a necessity they will have to adjust to.
I mean, I would just add that I'm like super pro carbon tax, not just for data centers, but for everything, right? Like when we take a vacation and you hop on a plane, there's like a hidden cost there that no one accounts for. So I don't know. I mean, to me, I think it's all good. And it makes the question of value even more important because now you're not just talking about money, but it's money plus environment. And you need to be very smart about that. So again, like super optimistic about AI, but you need to find the right value proposition in your company.
I believe that will counterbalance because as of now, especially if you are private funded or public firm, I think there is market pressure also for you to adopt AI because fear of missing out or you lose on to your competition. So I think having that thing on balance sheet, maybe I think counterbalance or balance it out some of the market pressures as well. And it may be a good thing overall for our climate. Again, personal opinion at this point.
You're legally held by so.
Just a critical that because for you gentlemen about you guys want to hear from this to talk about climate change and technology impacts. One AI query produces as much emission of carbon as 5 households in 1 year. So there will be a point where the cost of AI to the climate change, if we don't change how we produce energy, will be too high to sustain AI. So keep that in mind, everybody. This is not a road that we're just going to need to do this.
And that relates with how far can we go with the next LLM, we talked about energy might be the next constraint and not necessarily.
Good question. Just like there's some people try to move both the energy and compute to the space because we case to the space.
That'll be interesting.
Yeah, exactly. It's happening. So because you don't have to bring down the energy to the Earth.
That's fine.
So compute can move to the space.
That'll be
not
nice.
it can come down.
Yes.
The results can come down.
Very good.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That'll be very cool. I actually had that idea like 20 years ago.
Too late. I would say even though you're moving the compute to the space, still getting that rocket up there has its own carbon footprint and you
build it in space.
That will be cheaper, and it's cheaper than having the carbon.
Because you don't need to bring down the energy here.
That's what.
Well, I mean, it is interesting because data centers right now are 4% of U.S. national energy usage. And so AMD and others have predicted that in the next couple of years, it'll be 10% of all energy across America. So yes, if we actually talk about infrastructure, the cost of AI is enormous. Natural water, I personally believe that we will have to actually start allocating, our energy usages in our houses to then make up for the fact that our data centers are operating. Do we want our data centers to operating 24/7? Do we want our houses to operate? We'll have to make some of these decisions because we're not adding energy at this level, at this speed in America. Now, again, you can look at across the world and look at other places that you can do, but when you're looking at cooling these centers, when you're looking at all this compute, space may be the best place, or our oceans to drop them in, right? So I think that we have so much innovation to handle for the AI pipes and the AI infrastructure that we're not even really thinking about it at the everyday level. In our election levels, we're not hearing that in just boiling up of where do we want our data centers, how far away do we want them, and what are we going to do with the data center waste and energy capacity that they will take from the rest of the community. So lots of opportunities there for sustainability, and enforcing clean energy, but then also enforcing, what is that Bill of Rights for those communities around it as well. So I think there's going to be a lot of really great conversations happening, as it gets, as we still adopt AI and find those wonderful use cases, and then really adopt them into our everyday lives. But so we're at time. I'll do one more final question. Haresh, do you want to ask it?
I do. I think what's on the list
But this is probably a very hard question.
What is one thing that is impossible that we possibly primary without AI?
Okay, I'll start. No, I thought about that, and in reality, we don't even know. Like, it's gonna be wild. It already is wild. The amount of progress. If I'm looking at the email. I came from Microsoft. I did video, and a year ago, if you remember, there was the meme of Will Smith eating spaghetti. That was the quality of the video that we could produce, and now you can produce video, like generate video. I do think that entertainment might be an interesting thing to think about 6 years from now, where you can have a personalized entertainment that is personalized to you, ideally with your buddies. So you can co-create a movie and then watch the movie that you just co-created together. I'm thinking Roblox for kids today. Like when we were young, we would play outside. I don't know, now they play in Roblox, but they socialize there. And it will be the same, just the next level. You'll probably create your own environment, I know, VR or not, but then play in that movie or play in that thing.
I can just add something random. Just don't quote me on this because it's very random. But I'll say that maybe we're going to have one best friend of all our best friends that is an AI. Maybe.
Maybe you won't know that it's AI.
That could also happen too.
That's I also thought I got the question. Would you ever be willing to work for an AI? Like, will AI replace managers, leaders at some point? Or will we know that person, like we want that interpersonal connection? We saw how much we missed it during COVID. And I wonder, like, how many humans will agree in the future to work for an AI entity or AI, not necessarily conscient?
Is it paying more or less?
What? Sorry?
Is it paying more or less?
I don't know.
Have you seen The Matrix?
Depends on the carbon footprint of that entity, but yes.
I agree. High degree of personalization. One of the things, though, that really excites me is something I talked about earlier. It's the idea that, with enough compute and data, we don't need to understand the fundamental scientific principles to actually make breakthroughs, say, in medicine. And I think the applications there are really exciting. So we might have, treatments that wouldn't have been possible without AI. It might personalize medicine, right? And the ability to, there's a privacy concern there, but if we had enough, sensor data, imagine the type of, nutritional and other type medical experiments would know what's causing X, influences Y, which is usually actually multifactorial. There's no way to put those causes. And we wouldn't have a formula for it, but we might have an AI model that says, okay, you hit, 50 of these other factors all put together, we think your risk is that. I think that might be more possible than it has been.
It already left. I have plenty of ideas. Like we talked about the medical. I remember a decade ago we talked about IVF treatments because I had an employee that went through IVF successfully, luckily. But she said that the recipe of hormones and things that to make it work for her, they had to try randomly or semi-randomly a bunch of stuff. And if you look at big data, this is like what worked in that, and that's exactly where AI, and I don't, maybe then we'll need to worry about overpopulation because people will not die as much as they do today. In a good way, it's not necessarily a bad way, but it's a different problem to solve.
Yeah, all of that. Plus, I feel the amount of basically data that can be processed through LLMs and other channels will solve some of the problems which were previously unthinkable, either in medicine, and then we'll be living in blended reality, where it will be very tough for you to differentiate whether you are interacting with human beings or, I think, AI agents, etc. So I think we all will get used to blended reality and will be able to solve previously unthinkable problems.
Well, Hassan will help me congratulate and thank our wonderful panelists today. Awesome.